Let's talk about week 4 in the NBA. A pretty busy week, but an interesting week from a fantasy perspective. How we can stream to maximize our advantages. Michael Bolton.
Thanks, Josh. It's Michael Bolton here, and it's time for another episode of the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast. Let's get to it.
Let's get to it, indeed.
You are Locked On Fantasy, your daily NBA fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast, brought to you by Basketball Monster. My name is Josh Lloyd and I have a bachelor's degree in angle grinding. I'm also the lead fantasy analyst at basketballmonster.com, and today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Head to FanDuel.com to get started. Thank you also for making Locked On Fantasy Basketball not only your first listen every day, but part of the Locked On Podcast Network, which is the #1 sports podcast network in the United States. And thank you to you guys for helping to push us there. Fantastic. Really, really proud of the network and this show and all the support that people have given to get us to that spot. We're talking about week 4 in the NBA. So we're going to dig straight into this and talk about how it looks, how it plays out, what sort of moves that we can make to prioritize long-term health and short-term value. I think that's sort of what we're doing. But we wanted to get the lay of the land. How does the general week look? That's how we like to start these weeks off. So let's take a look at how week 4 plays out. And it's not particularly different, honestly, to last week in terms of the volume of games. We're in a pretty similar spot. This week, the difference is that last week we had 2 days that really weren't streamable. An 11-game Wednesday and an 11-game Friday. This week, it's just a 12-game Wednesday. We have 9 on Monday, pretty busy, but usually you can manage that. 6 on Tuesday, 12 on Wednesday. We don't have an insane 1-game Thursday. We've got 3 instead. And then we've got 9 games Friday, 5 on Saturday, and 8 on Sunday. So a quiet second half of the week, a busy first half of the week. Right, and that's good to know. We know that things are going to ease off, especially if you're playing in, say, Locked On Fantasy Basketball Bowl, and you've got the weekly games cap. Know that it's going to be a little heavier tilted towards the first 3 days than it is the back 4 days. If you just count this up, there's 27 games in the first 3 days, and 25 in the last 4. All right, so it's even, but that's 3 versus 4. So you want to go a little heavier early on in the week to try and make sure that you are making sure you hit your limits. How does that look in terms of teams? If you are watching this on the video side of it over on YouTube, you can see how the games play out. 15 teams play 4 games, which has been basically the same nearly every week. We've got 1 2-game team, the Philadelphia 76ers. That means that 14 teams play 3 games. The 4-game teams are, and remember, 4 games is 4 games, that is true, but not all 4 games are created equal. Some of them will play on the Wednesday, giving them, in terms of streaming guys, 3 usable games. And for the 3-game teams, some of them will not play on the Wednesday, which also gives them 3 usable games, which we will talk about a little bit later. The 4-game teams are Atlanta, Charlotte, Cleveland, Dallas, Golden State, the Clippers, the Lakers, Milwaukee, New Orleans, Orlando, Phoenix, Portland, Sacramento, San Antonio, Utah. And like I said, Philadelphia's turn this week to play 1 game. So if you were looking for, I think, some impetus to push off of Jared McCain, who I do not believe is going to have 12-team value, now you've got to hold through limited minutes and only 2 games in a week, when you could be turning that roster spot into a lot more. Maybe that's the little push that you need for this upcoming week. That will now enable me actually, to take you guys right into the stream zone. What are we looking at in terms of how we can potentially stream out things this week? So, we already know how that schedule looks with the 1 high volume day sitting on Wednesday, but the quality games for the week. Every day is considered a quality day except Wednesday. The Utah Jazzmen, who are falling apart, not surprisingly, they're the only team that plays 4 games out of the 15 that avoid Wednesday. They are the only team that avoid Wednesday out of those 15 teams. There are 4 teams that you would, on first glance, look at as being only 3-game teams, not as useful, but you should clump them with the 4-game teams. Brooklyn, Indiana, Minnesota, and Toronto, because all 3 of their games avoid Wednesday. Whereas the other 10 teams that play 4 games, they play on Wednesday, meaning they have 2 usable streaming days. So that's what we're talking about. Utah sits above all of the other 4-game teams. Brooklyn, Indiana, Minnesota, and Toronto, they can all jump up with those other 14 4-game teams to form that next tier of teams in terms of streaming. So realistically, you've got 1 at the top is Utah, you've got 18 in the middle, then you've got the other 10 teams that play 2 quality games out of the 3-gamers, and then the Sixers with their 2 games as well. And I believe, I'm going to double check this, I probably should know this off the top of my head, but I'm pretty sure the Sixers avoid the Wednesday as well, so they can almost be lumped in, even though it is a 2-game week, they can almost be lumped in with those other 3-game teams. Let me double check that. Yes, and Philadelphia does avoid Wednesday. So while doesn't feel as good, but like that's the same as a Wizards guy or a Thunder player or a Knicks player or a Heat player or a Grizzlies player, where they play 2 streamable quality games on that day. Now, let's take a look at what we do. What is the plan that we could have? Now, there are multiple ways to attack this to maximize your games out for the week, if you so choose to do that. I still think we should be looking more longer term, having some patience, taking some L's, planning for longer term replacements versus hardcore streaming. But if you do want to stream it hard, this little mode here will enable you to do it. If you've got a standard 3 or 4 moves for the week, this gives you 3, this uses 3 moves. And what it does, it can turn 1 roster spot, which might include a Philadelphia 76er player, or one of those players that I mentioned who has 2 quality games. A Wizards player, a Thunder, Knicks, Heat, Grizzlies, Houston Rockets, Detroit Pistons, Denver Nuggets, Chicago Bulls, and Boston Celtics. You could have a fringe player from any of those 10 teams, and you can turn that roster spot into 6 games. You can go from 2 to 6. Now, is that enough to get you a win during the week? It might be. 4 extra games is basically an extra 10% of production, because as a general rule, we play 38 to 41 games a week, something like that, right? Adding 4 extra games in one slot gives you the opportunity to add around 10% extra production. So the value is there, if you want to do it. I find the best way to do it, to give you probably the most value out of it, is to find a Utah Jazz player, because they go Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, which in reality is a pseudo back-to-back-to-back, because we've got the Wednesday in the middle there. So the three usable days to begin the week, it's Jazz. Now you could say, well, why can't I do Monday, Tuesday back-to-back, ignore Wednesday, do Thursday, Friday, then Saturday, Sunday? Well, you could, but there's no Thursday, Friday back-to-back. There's no 3 games in 4 nights to end the week. So realistically, you could do it if you could go Monday, Tuesday, then you could go, I'll do a singular Thursday stream, then do Friday, Saturday, and a singular Sunday. But that uses 4 moves to still get to 6 games. Not as efficient. Doesn't give you the longer term stash acquisition that you probably are going to need. So realistically, it's the Jazz. And that's where, again, we have to talk Jusuf Nurkic. You might hate Jusuf Nurkic. You might think he's the worst player in the world. You might think he's going to destroy your percentages. Okay, low volume. But a starting center who might play 30 minutes a night, probably more realistically 26 or so, getting 4 quality games, including 3 quality games on the first 3 streamable days, is bloody useful. Now, they did, for some reason, out of nowhere, re-add Isaiah Collier to the starting mix, moving Taylor Hendricks back to the bench. So Hendricks and Filipowski are on the bench. But if you're ever going to be considering Hendricks and Filipowski for the right now, this is the time. Same with Collier. Same with Mihailuk. 3 games. It is 3 games in 4 nights, but it's 3 games in 3 nights, really. Then you can move off of that player. Probably not Nurkic. He's probably a hold rest of season, to be honest. You can move off that Jazz guy, and then on Friday, Saturday, you can get a back-to-back from Charlotte. The big Areola, Knipple is a great target there, but maybe it's Trey Mann. The Lakers, Marcus Smart, Jake LaRavia. The Milwaukee Bucks, Kyle Kuzma, Gary Trent, Big Boom AJ Green. Or the Minnesota Timberwolves. Who would that be? Maybe Mike Conley, probably not. That one's a little harder because their bench guys don't really do a huge amount, but you've got other options. And then you can drop that player, and then on Sunday, you just pick and choose what you want. So that's 1 roster spot, which theoretically you've turned 2 usable games into 6 with 3 moves and 1 left over. Gives you a bit of a boost. That is the point of the stream zone. We'll come back and look schedule quirks, back-to-backs, and weekly leagues in a sec, but first of all, Today's episode is brought to you by DoorDash. The NBA season is heating up and DoorDash has found the perfect way to keep you guys in your bag all season long. You might be watching highlights of your fantasy team, your favorite players, whatever it is, your favorite teams. DoorDash makes every game night even better. And DoorDash is the official on-demand delivery platform of the NBA, and they're celebrating with something called the bag drop. Every time an NBA player scores 50 points in a game, DoorDash drops 50% off your Dash Pass the next day, and you're automatically entered in for a chance to win the ultimate fan bag. It's not just food, though. With DoorDash, you can get everything from snacks and drinks, headphones, ice, even socks, all delivered. So the next time that someone goes for 50, use the promo code NBA50 the next day to get 50% off on DoorDash with Dash Pass, plus your shot at the bag drop. Dash Pass members only, 50% off up to $10 the day after a 50-point game with promo code. Terms apply. No purchase necessary. Ends April 13th. Open to US residents 21 or older. Visit DoorDashInYourBag.com for full details. DoorDash in your bag all season long. Let's take a look at some of the schedule quirks across week 4's NBA schedule. Of course, what are the weird little things that do matter for us when we play fantasy? There's one team, the Houston Rockets, who do not play a game until Wednesday. This doesn't really matter that much, but if you were considering after the last game that Reed Shepherd had that was good, that you wanted to add him, realize that the first game is on Wednesday and there are 12 games on. So realistically, you burn a roster spot for 3 zeros. Well, it's not a 0 on Wednesday, but you know what I mean, right? Is that a good move? Probably not, even though Reed looked good. But if you believe in the long-term value there, then that's what you do. There are 4 teams this week who have empty weekends. They can do whatever they want. Detroit, Miami, New York, and Philadelphia are all absent of games Saturday, Sunday. There is a few little sections this week where teams have big chunks of days off. Between Tuesday to Thursday, Minnesota does not play. Between Thursday to Saturday, this is what I'm talking about earlier on the show, about quieter patches towards the end of the week. Between Thursday and Saturday, Boston, Chicago, and Washington just don't play. So, your Trey Jones, your Kevin Huerter, CJ McCollum, maybe Bilal Coulibaly. Like, do you really hold for 3 zeros? Don't know. There are a few portions during the week as well where a team plays once in 5 nights. Between Tuesday to Saturday, your Chicago Bulls play once in 5 nights. And that is very clearly not good. And the problem with both Chicago and Washington there is the once that they do play is a 12-game Wednesday. So if you have fringe players on those teams, I already talked about Chicago and Washington having 3 days off, but they also, the only game they play between Monday and Sunday is a 12-game Wednesday. So any of your fringies from those teams are basically useless. That's too long to burn that roster spot for fringe players. Towards the end of the week, this is to be expected when they are a team that plays only twice this week. The Philadelphia 76ers play 1 game in 5 nights between Wednesday and Sunday to end the week. So once to end the week. But we know that they don't play on the Wednesday. So at least you know you get at least 1 game out of them in that time frame. The other bunch of scheduled things to look at, we'll look in 3 games in 4 nights and those sort of things. So we'll start off with the 3 game in 4 night periods. There are a lot to begin the week. So Sunday into Wednesday, that's Sunday of week 3. It's Boston, Detroit, Golden State, Memphis, Milwaukee, New York, Oklahoma City. Monday to Thursday, Atlanta, Cleveland, Phoenix, Utah. Now you'll remember at the start I said the only team that goes 3 games in 4 nights to begin the week is Utah. But I should have stated, and I thought I did, but I don't think I did now, is that Utah is the only team that goes 3 games in 4 nights, excluding Wednesday. So Atlanta, Cleveland, Phoenix go 3 games in 4 nights. But one of those 3 games is Wednesday. So it's not as useful. Between Tuesday and Friday, Golden State, New York, and Sacramento, 3 games in 4 nights. Wednesday to Saturday, Charlotte, Cleveland, the Lakers, and Milwaukee, 3 games in 4 nights. And there is no 3 game in 4 night Thursday through to Sunday because the end of the week is much, much quieter. What about if we extend that view out a little bit more? 4 games in 6 nights. Do we have any scenarios like that? We do. Between Sunday of week 3 and Friday of week 4, Detroit, Golden State, Milwaukee, the Knicks, Orlando, and Sacramento play 3 games in 4 nights. Monday through to Saturday, these are 4-game teams that are then done by Sunday. Charlotte, Cleveland, the Lakers, Milwaukee, but we also know that they all play on Wednesday. And then Tuesday to Sunday, it's Golden State and Sacramento that play 4 games in 6 nights at the end of the week. We also go into 5 games in 7 nights. There is one team that does it. It's not your traditional week, though. It is between Sunday of week 3 and Saturday of week 4. It is the Milwaukee Bucks. So we already talked about, hey, there's a streaming value there in Gary Trent and AJ Green. If you've got more of a longer view of it, there is a good period there starting on Sunday. 5 games, 7 nights, but they do play on the 12-game Wednesday. We also have plenty of situations here where teams play 5 games in 8 nights. So between Sunday of week 3 and Sunday of week 4, Golden State, Milwaukee, Orlando, Sacramento. Between Monday of week 4 and Monday of week 5, it's Charlotte, Cleveland, Dallas, the Clippers, Milwaukee, and the New Orleans Pelicans. And we also do have a scenario where there's one team that has a very, very busy 6-game in 9-night period. From Sunday of week 3 to Monday of week 4, and given what I just showed you with the 4 games or 5 games in 8 nights, you know it has to be the Bucks. So they have a very busy period of games. Be very cautious about Giannis in this time frame. Will he play all 6 games? I would guess probably not. Let's take a look at where the back-to-backs sit for this week. Sunday heading into Monday. 7 games into 9. 4 teams. Detroit, Milwaukee, Minnesota, Orlando. Only one team has the Monday, Tuesday back-to-back, and that is the Jazz. A lot play Tuesday, Wednesday, but that is 6 into 12. 12-game Wednesday. Boston, Denver, Golden State, Memphis, New York, Oklahoma City, and Sacramento. There are 3 teams that go Wednesday into Thursday, but one of those includes a 12-game Wednesday. That's Atlanta, Cleveland, and Phoenix. And the rest of the back-to-backs for the week, we've got first let's do Tuesday to Thursday, which is the pseudo back-to-back surrounding the 12-game Wednesday. We already talked about Utah, but having that 3-game in 4-night period. But Indiana and Toronto also play Tuesday and Thursday. If you wanted to do a single stream Monday, you can then also include Indiana and Toronto in your Tuesday-Thursday combo. Friday to Saturday, it is Charlotte, the Lakers, the Bucks, and the Wolves. And because, like I said, we've got a very quiet back half of the week with 4 teams not even playing on the weekend, we don't have a single weekend back-to-back this week. Every other week it seemed to be the Hornets or the Pacers or something, but this week we do not have a single back-to-back on the weekend coming up. We will come back and we'll take a look at weekly leagues and players that are interesting to add for this week in particular, where their value is boosted, and guys that you might even consider starting. We'll get to that in a sec. Today's episode, though, it is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on that action than with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. And even with FanDuel, if you've missed the start of a game, you can jump in and get live with betting. You can bet on who's going to score next. You can bet on fourth quarter comebacks. You can check on what you're seeing in the game and bet on that outcome live after the game has started. Right now, FanDuel is also giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So go to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. And don't forget to gamble responsibly. Today's episode is also brought to you by Prize Picks. We make decisions every day, but with Prize Picks, being right can get you paid. Don't miss any of that excitement of the NBA season. And it can be other sports too. NHL, NFL, whatever sport you're looking for, you can jump in on that action with Prize Picks. The simplest way to play. You just pick more or less on at least 2 player stats, and if you get them right, which can take only 60 seconds to actually get that lineup going, if you get it right, you win. Easy. Plus, they've got the stacks where you can use individual stats from the same player. You can use Steph's points, his threes, and his assists in the same lineup, if you so choose. So download the Prize Picks app today and use the code LOCKEDONNBA to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. The code is LOCKEDONNBA for $50 in lineups after your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, it's good to be right. And then we're just going to end things out on this week 4 preview by just taking a look at weekly lock leagues. These are not leagues where you compete weekly. These are leagues where you cannot change your lineup during the week. You can only do it on Monday, and that's what we're going to look at. So who are some players who are over 65% available on Yahoo that I think that you would add and start this week? One of them is Jusuf Nurkic. One of them is the big fella for all you Kalk heads out there, Ryan Kalkbrenner, the big Kalk. He's there. He just needs to be rostered anyway, but you would start him in 4 games. And this is when we talk weekly leagues. Quality games don't matter. A 12-game Wednesday does not matter because you're locking them in at the start of the week. You're not streaming. So who do I make a benching decision each day? You just lock them in. DeAndre Hunter. There was always a worry with Hunter and what happens is his knee flare up or something, but I think he's all right. Wendell Carter Jr. and Aaron Nesmith. Yeah, he will brutalize your percentages maybe, but he also might not. He hasn't historically been bad at that, and the volume is going to be there. And that is what you want. Extra volume, good games, opportunity for a player with minutes to be able to add something to your weekly league. And then, of course, if you're in a weekly league, one of the decisions you have to make is, what do I do with Philadelphia 76ers players? They've only got 2 games. Do I start any of them? Maxey. I would not start Joel Embiid. I definitely would not start the dominatrix VJ Edgecombe. I would not start Kelly Oubre. And I definitely would not start Quentin Grimes. I would start Tyrese Maxey. If I was in a league that went like 175 to 180 deep, I would start Embiid. It would need to be like a 200-player deep league, I'd say, to consider Edgecombe or Oubre or Grimes as a start. But for most of you, it is just going to be Tyrese Maxey. And what that is the end of the weekly preview show for week 4. So, if you could do so for the number 1 sports podcast network in the United States, hit the thumb up button, comment, subscribe, and double bang. If you're listening on audio, fantastic. Love that you're there. If you're watching on video, go listen to the audio as well. Have it in your headphones as you're moving around the house. Guys, we are done here. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. See ya.